Hello everyone. Tonight I will be reading to you from a section of the book Woman's Evolution by Evelyn Reed. As some of you may or may not know, feminists and socialists in particular view anthropology through an evolutionary lens, and it makes up a backbone of theory that we work from. Evelyn Reed was a socialist and a women's liberationist, and part of her contribution was, as a Marxist feminist, she put forward a lot in the way of understanding theory, our own evolution as a species, from, being pre-civilization and how we came into being civilized, and analyzing that in a way that we can understand to then create the conditions that we would like to see, right? We want a world where there is equality between the genders, or maybe even a whole lack of this notion of gender, and more of a society that does not have those kind of rigid structures in place, and a world free from exploitation where basically everyone is able to share in the abundance that we have created. So, let's get started. So I found this section particularly interesting. The animal family is the product of the maternal instincts and of those alone. The mother is the sole center and bond of it. Sexual instincts, which bring the male and the female together, have no part in the formation of the group. The male has no share in forming the animal family. He is not an essential member of it. He may join that maternal group, but commonly does not do so. When he attaches himself to the animal family, his association with it is loose and precarious. There is no division of labor between the sexes in procuring the means of subsistence. The protective functions are exercised by the female and not by the male. Those who attempt to portray animal life and behavior in patriarchal terms not only become involved in contradictions, but often produce absurdities. This is the case with Ardrey and his lion pride. He portrays the solitary male attached to the group of females and cubs as their lord and master, upon whom they are dependent for their sustenance. He writes, "A lion pride is a hunting unit, and this would seem to be the sole reason for its existence. And it is the extraordinary dominance of the male lion, and little else, that welds the society together," from his work African Genesis. What Ardrey calls a lion pride is actually a pack of lionesses who have permitted a male access to their group. On his own, the male lion hunts and kills his own food, but when he is attached to a group of females, they are in charge of the hunt. As Ardrey puts it, the male lion rarely makes the kill. Such entertainments he leaves to the lioness. His normal position in the hunting pride is in the center, with lionesses spread out on either flank, considerably in advance. If, as Ardrey says, the sole reason for the lion pride is hunting and providing food, the male is not an indispensable member, since he does neither. The females are the huntresses, providing food for themselves and their cubs, and even feeding the male they have permitted in their group. Contrary to Ardrey's opinion, the pride of lionesses is welded together not by the extraordinary dominance of the male, but by the maternal functions of the females. Ardrey may wish to glorify the image of the solitary male hero, who might otherwise cut an ignominious figure, surrounded as he is and controlled by a formidable pack of lionesses. But for all his handsome mane and noble mane, King Lion is not the master of a harem of lionesses. He is no more than a stud for their convenience in the mating season. He remains with the group only as long as they wish and during his good behavior. At any time he can be replaced by a younger and stronger dominant male who succeeds in usurping his place, or the pack of females may desert him and go off on their own. Thus, male dominance in the animal world, far from being a mark of superiority, is a serious liability. Unable to join together in mutual cooperation and protection, males are the expendable sex. In the competitive struggle of males to win a place in the female group, only a few can achieve this objective. The others are condemned to wander off as loners, attempting from time to time to find a place in a group. Many die off or are killed in competitive struggles. So, why is this important to understand? She puts forward in this book basically the understanding that it was females, particularly, in our heritage as human beings, it was the females who, by putting restrictions upon males, such as, not eating together, having taboos of who could be slept with and who could not be slept with, what could be eaten and what could not be eaten. What she puts forward is more of a threat of cannibalism than of incest, which a lot of anthropologists believe is where taboo comes from. She believes it's actually to protect from, eating other humans, and humans that would be defined as human by the group. So cannibalism has been a big part of human history and development, and to safeguard pretty much the young and more vulnerable members of a group of humans, these taboos had to be put into place about who you could sleep with and who you could eat with, and what you could eat. She puts forward basically the understanding that it was females through their, not only through their mastering of agriculture, but through their imposition of rules upon males in creating, human collectives that, created the conditions with which men would cooperate and build societies together as they do today. Because in nature, and particularly in the animal kingdom, things are run pretty much by females, and especially, with mammals and particularly primates like we are. But this isn't really acknowledged in a lot of scientific work. Even today, or you're watching like a scientific program on TV, it's always done through the patriarchal lens. People anthropomorphize animals and try to put a patriarchal perspective on the animal kingdom, which is not patriarchal. I mean, males may be stronger, and they may be, prone to dominance and violence, but they don't dominate females in the wild. Those sorts of things are, dominance over other males so that they can mate with females. And most of the time females are avoidant of males because of their propensity towards violence, and, it's females are more likely to be animals which are trying to further the life of the species, raising young and whatnot. So, males, it's just interesting to me how she writes about them as the second sex. Actually, they are the secondary sex. They are of, less value in the wild. But our culture has that completely on its head, doesn't it? And it's, it's fascinating to think about, like, females actually, putting regulations on males in order to set up a human society. And how anthropologists would study that is by studying, cultures which have not yet reached, like, civilization as we would see it. So there's a lot of writing about the Aborigines, and various groups in parts of the world that have not, mastered those sorts of things of agriculture and animal husbandry, and how they're structured. And even through a lot of the anthropologist texts, you see looking at these things through the eyes of patriarchal, through a patriarchal lens. You see these, the customs that people put, like, that they're imposed by men, when it makes more sense that these would be customs put in place by women. Such as, like, males and females eating separately, or eating different foods. Women abstaining from meat eating in a lot of places in the world, except on special occasions, would be part of the female fear of, like, cannibalism. It's very interesting how she goes into that, and I'm not really explaining it well there. But yeah. It is then that we have to think about, like, how we went from maternal clans in our more primitive stages to now being in patriarchal families as the structures that run society, which is largely to do with men becoming the owners of property after the agricultural revolution, in control of livestock and land, and needing to pass on their property to their descendants, when prior to that, it was females who were the owners of property, in personal property, in a very, loose sense, and that those things would be passed down that female line. Now, I'm not suggesting that we go back to something like that in any sense, but it is important to recognize that this male control of society is not natural, and it comes at a huge cost to all of humanity. There's one more thing I wanted to talk about. One of the interesting things is how competitive women in a patriarchal society are with one another, particularly in terms of how we look. Because in nature, females tend to be far more plain and not really fanciful looking, while the males develop, like, large muscles, kind of ferocious teeth, strength, in terms of being competitive with other males to attract females. Though in our culture that's completely turned on its head, and it's females who are incredibly competitive with one another for the attention of males. Not that males don't compete in some ways for women, but it's done in a completely different way. And it's not that kind of intense. The intensity is just not the same. I mean, that isn't something that happens in nature. Females do not compete for males. Females, again, are the more valued sex, just in terms of our biology. So, I don't know. Do you just think that maybe this is all, like, this whole patriarchy thing is just, like, vagina envy? I'm kidding, but yeah. Interesting stuff to think about.